All right. I think we have reached critical mass here, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Thanks again to everyone for taking time out of your busy day to join us for our State of Student Debt. Today is February 25th, and so all of our policy related information will be accurate as of today. Just a few housekeeping notes before we proceed. This workshop is being recorded, and everyone will receive a copy of that recording following today's session. So if you have to step away or get distracted at any point, not to worry. Again, you'll receive a copy of that recording in your inbox following the session. That said, as always, we'd like these to feel as interactive as possible. But with these town halls, because the audience is much larger, we're going to try to do our best to answer as many questions as we can, but we can't guarantee it. But that said, if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put those in the Q&A. I'm joined by some of my colleagues on our amazing customer support team, Mickey and Matt, who are going to be trying their best to answer those as they come in. And if you need to enable closed captioning or live transcription on the webinar, I'll be posting a link in the chat with instructions on how to enable this feature on Zoom. All right, so a quick look at the agenda we're going to cover here today. First, going to do some brief introductions of myself, who we are here at Savi, and we have a special guest speaker here today that I'll introduce in just a second. Very excited. And then we are going to dive into the latest student loan policy updates. So some of the topics are going to include things like the end of the SAVE plan, what replaces it and what you might need to do, changes to income-driven repayment options, what slower forgiveness processing means in practice and in reality for many borrowers. We're going to talk about wage garnishment and the rising risk of default, and what Parent Plus loan borrowers and public service loan borrowers should know and be doing right now. And then we are going to turn things over to our guest speaker for a policy deep dive on some of the ongoing litigation and rulemaking that's happening in the world of student loans. And then, as always, we're going to kind of wrap things up nicely and outline some of the next steps that you can take within Savi to help you navigate all of these changes. All right, so just realized my video is off, guys. Sorry about that. Wanted to introduce the presenters here today. So my name is Lindsay Clark. I'm our Chief Borrower Advocate and Director of External Affairs here at Savi. If you've attended one of our many webinars or town halls before, you either know my face or my voice, but I oversee making sure that all of our Savi borrowers and borrowers in general are able to navigate these programs and have the education and information they need to make informed decisions. I'm a borrower myself. I have a little over $200,000 in student loan debt, and I always say that in case it makes some of you feel better in comparison about your own situations, but because being a borrower impacts how I communicate about these topics. I know firsthand how complicated and overwhelming it can be. So our goal here today is, despite how intensive some of these programs and policy changes can be and feel, to communicate them to you in a way that is easy to digest and makes clear what, if any, action you might need to take as a result. And I am joyed to announce our special guest presenter joining me here today, Austin Hinkle, who is a partner at the Public Goods Practice. Austin and I have known each other for a couple of years now, starting through his work at the CFPB. But Austin founded the Public Goods Practice to protect borrowers and hold accountable the companies that unfairly profit from student debt. Before launching PGP, he worked at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, the U.S. Department of Education, the Department of Treasury, and the Obama White House, where he led efforts to uncover and address systemic failures in the student loan system and improve operations. So Austin brings this experience to PGP, combining rigorous legal analysis with a practical understanding of how servicers, lenders, and schools operate. He works closely with borrowers to build cases that not only seek individual justice, but also drive systemic accountability across the higher education finance system. So we've brought Austin and PGP in to help us here at Savi stay on top of the most recent legal developments in the space and fully understand the most complicated borrower situations. So between the two of us, you have really got some advocates looking out for all of you here today. So Austin, thanks for joining us. And you'll be hearing from Austin a little bit later on in the presentation. Now, we are here because of Savi. I work for Savi, and Savi is our sort of the benefit that we launch with all of our partners here. And you are all able to access Savi through whether it's your employment membership association and union. And Savi is a technology startup based in Washington, D.C. We were founded by student loan experts and advocates who've been fighting on behalf of the borrower for more than a decade, and realized how difficult it was for people to navigate these programs on their own. So we decided to do something about it. And we built Savi to not only help borrowers understand their options, get into the right plan, and cross that finish line, but because we felt borrowers needed someone to look out for them. There are a lot of entities in this space that exist to service your debt. Their interests start and end with your student loan debt. They make money off of your debt, and that's not us here at Savi. You, as the borrower, are our primary concern, and our goal is to help you achieve the best outcome possible. And we are providing Savi's tools and resources as an exclusive student loan benefit through our various partnerships across the country, whether it be employers, membership organizations, unions, associations, you name it. And we are excited that all of you are able to get access to today's town hall, but also to your Savi accounts to be able to take this information and put it into action. So we're going to talk a little bit later on about exactly how you can do that. One other thing that I wanted to mention that I think is really great is that this benefit is not just available to you, the member or employee, but to your family members as well. We want to make sure that the broader community that you are in is able to tackle those student loans as well. So we'll show you later on in the presentation how you can invite your family members to access Savi and achieve the best outcome they can. Alrighty. So with that said, we are going to transition and dive right in to the important policy updates of the moment, again, as of February 25th, 2026. Okay, first up is the SAVE plan. So the headline here, the SAVE plan is ending and it's on its way out. All right, so that's the most important thing you really need to be aware of right now. The court settlement, once it's finalized, will permanently end SAVE, stop any new enrollments, deny any pending SAVE applications, and move current SAVE borrowers into other available plans. Now, for millions of people who are enrolled on SAVE, I believe about 8 million borrowers were enrolled at one point. This means the era of ultra low SAVE payments is ending. Okay, because SAVE was introduced as the most affordable income-driven repayment plan to date under the Biden administration. And it means then that a higher monthly bill may be coming sooner than expected. Now, if you've been in the SAVE-related forbearance, you've had a long stretch without required payments, okay, right? That SAVE forbearance went into effect last year, which paused payments for borrowers, and you've likely remained in that forbearance unless you've switched out into a different repayment plan. But that pause has come with trade-offs. So interest has been accruing again since last summer, August 1st, to be exact, was when interest began to resume. And that time in forbearance generally has not been helping borrowers make progress towards forgiveness the way many had hoped, okay? So borrowers in SAVE, all right, currently in SAVE that is, will be moved into other repayment plans in the near future. All right. Now, the details on that we still don't know, and we hope to be getting more information on that in the coming weeks and months. But borrowers always have the ability to switch or enroll into a different income-driven repayment plan at any point, and they can do so now if they'd like. So what does this mean for you, the borrower? If you are in the SAVE plan, okay, you may be asked to choose a new plan on a limited timeline, all right? If you don't choose, you could be placed into a plan you would not have picked, and that plan might have a higher monthly payment amount, all right? Many borrowers should expect higher monthly payments under other plans than they had under the SAVE plan, not only because the fact that SAVE was the most affordable in the way that it was calculated, but especially because payments often get recalculated using more recent income. So if when you enrolled in the SAVE plan, your income was much lower, okay, than it is, let's say, right now, right? And they move you into a different plan in which they're going to recalculate your monthly payment based on your more recent income, that monthly payment is going to go up regardless, right? Again, so keeping that in mind, that it's going to, whatever you're paying on SAVE was locked in the moment you enrolled, which was a year, 2 years ago, if not more, okay? So your income now, if it has gone up, will be reflected in any income-driven repayment plan that you're going to be enrolled in. If you are pursuing public service loan forgiveness, or PSLF, the SAVE-related forbearance generally is not giving automatic credit towards PSLF or IDR forgiveness right now, okay? And I know we've talked about that on many town halls with regards to, PSLF qualifying credit and things like PSLF buyback. And this can feel like running on a treadmill that's not counting your steps, right? Now, we're going to talk about PSLF buyback and some other things later on, but here's what you can do right now within Savi. First, you want to check your current plan and your likely alternatives using your Savi account. So make sure your information is up to date and you can see your plan options when it comes to the various income-driven plans you're eligible for aside from SAVE. If you are PSLF eligible, you can use Savi to confirm that you're positioned to keep earning qualifying credit going forward. That's going to be the most important thing, right? So maybe you want to switch into another plan now. We want to make sure that you're getting into the right plan and that you're going to be able to continue getting credit for PSLF if you are eligible. All right, moving on. Let's talk about income-driven repayment in general, outside of SAVE. And the big headline here is that it's still available, but timing really matters. There's a lot of moving pieces here that we're going to try to break down. So SAVE is ending, obviously, but right now there are 3 other income-driven repayment plans still available for borrowers to enroll. That is IBR, or income-based repayment, pay-as-you-earn, or pay, and ICR, or income contingent repayment. Okay, so those are the 3. Now, this is important because these plans are your main path to affordable payments and long-term forgiveness right now. Okay, but a couple things to keep in mind. Pay and ICR are scheduled to be phased out by the year 2028, and that was under the OBBB, right, that got signed into law last summer, and a lot of those changes that are coming into effect, right, this summer and in the coming years. So those 2 plans are going to be phased out ultimately, but you can still enroll now and take advantage of them until they are. Income-based repayment, or IBR, however, is sticking around, and it actually just became easier to access. The rules and eligibility around the program were recently expanded, and more borrowers are now eligible to enroll. All right, so let's dig a little deeper here. So now you no longer need a partial financial hardship to qualify for IBR. So many borrowers who were previously blocked from the plan can now enroll, and that payment amount might be lower than other options that you're either looking at or are currently enrolled on. And you can, again, check all of that through your Savi account to see what that looks like. This is a big deal, especially for borrowers exiting SAVE, as we just talked about in the previous slide. Parent Plus loan borrowers can also now access IBR. This is huge because Parent Plus loan borrowers previously could only access ICR after consolidating. That was the only income-driven repayment plan they were eligible for. They've now opened that up. So Parent Plus loan borrowers can access the IBR after they've consolidated and made one payment on ICR. This is a bit of a complicated process, right, involved here. And so for Parent Plus loan borrowers, I highly encourage you to reach out to Savi if this is something that you might be interested in. Generally speaking, that IBR monthly payment is going to be a heck of a lot lower than what you are paying on ICR, simply based on the plan calculations. So if you are interested in trying to do that, please make sure that you reach out to our team through your Savi account. We also show you that option and pathway through your Savi account, so you can do all of that within there as well. And then the last item around IBR is that income-driven forgiveness under IBR is being processed again. There was somewhat of a holdup there, but of all the IDR plans, IBR is the one in which they are actively processing that forgiveness. With pay and ICR, not so much. So, IBR is becoming more attractive for many borrowers. However, across the board, the reality is that processing delays exist and continue to exist. And while they may have gone down slightly from, let's say middle and early 2025 when they were in the millions, there are still hundreds of thousands of applications sitting in backlogs, whether it be forgiveness approvals, PSLF buyback, or even just review of income-driven repayment applications. So if you are close to 20 to 25 years of payment, right, for IDR forgiveness, or you are nearing 120 credits for PSLF eligibility, your timing matters more than ever, right? And so we want to make sure that anyone who is close to that finish line is able to make the right decision as far as their repayment options go so that they are not sabotaging their chances of getting that forgiveness in a timely manner. Okay, so while all of that is happening, all right, and that's sort of the current landscape when it comes to repayment and IDR, generally speaking, and this is much a result of the OBBB, right, and a lot of the changes that we've talked about in previous sessions that are coming down the pipeline, the repayment system is being technically rebuilt in real time, if you will. Okay, so this is sort of what we know as of now, and what we can kind of tell you to look ahead for. But I guarantee that as we continue to do these town halls, some of these details and as they come out from the Department of Education, will change, and the system is very, very fluid, and that's hence why it's being rebuilt in real time. But essentially, as the same time save is ending, Congress and the Department of Ed are in the middle of a major redesign, okay, that is reshaping, but really narrowing the set of repayment options over time or long term. And over the next few years, the sort of menu of IDR plans is scheduled to shrink. So older IDR plans that many borrowers, on here today rely on, like pay and ICR, are expected to phase out, like I mentioned before, while a new IDR plan called the Repayment Assistance Plan, or RAP, is scheduled to launch in July 2026. Now, RAP is designed to prevent balances from ballooning by waiving unpaid interest for borrowers who make the required monthly payment. Okay, good thing. It also includes a small monthly principal benefit for some borrowers. Okay. That said, RAP's forgiveness timeline is longer than what many borrowers associate with IDR today. It's 30 years instead of the 20 to 25. So in short, RAP may reduce balance growth, right? But it may also keep people in repayment longer. Now, that combination is going to land differently depending upon each borrower's income, the amount of student debt they have, whether someone is pursuing PSLF. RAP is PSLF eligible. So again, that's still going to be the 10 years or 120 credits to forgiveness. Okay. Now, in reality, right, this plan has not yet rolled out. It is scheduled to launch July 1 of this year. And Savi will be making sure that by that time, all of the sort of the RAP elements and eligibility are built into your Savi account so that you are able to see exactly what a payment could look like under this new plan and make a decision, from there. But in plain terms, right, as on a sort of bigger scale and policy level, the government's really trying to simplify the menu here, right? Take away some of the older plans, narrow it down to really just one. But as we know, simplification doesn't always mean better or cheaper for borrowers, right? So the big point that we want to make here is that the repayment system that you started with, the repayment plan you started your enrollment on, is not necessarily the one you will finish with. So it is worth understanding the direction the policies are going, because it's going to impact you and the plan that you're ultimately going to need to be on, whether it be this year or in the coming years. So that's why we're bringing this up to you here today. Okay, let's talk about Parent Plus loan borrowers. And this is a really, really big one. This is probably the only topic here today that has a deadline, a major deadline for action. And so I really want to make sure any and all Parent Plus loan borrowers on with us today are paying attention and hearing this. So Parent Plus loan rules are changing in 2026. Actions taken by the deadlines that I'm going to share in a second will determine what options as far as repayment and forgiveness that you will have going forward. Essentially, for Parent Plus loan borrowers, they will have fewer pathways to income-driven repayment and forgiveness going forward. After July 1, okay, any new Parent Plus loan borrowers will not have access to income-driven repayment across the board. Okay, that's new Parent Plus loan borrowers, as in those that are taking out new Parent Plus loans after July 1 of this year. Okay, for existing Parent Plus loan borrowers, all right, in order to retain eligibility for income-driven repayment and therefore things like public service loan forgiveness, you must consolidate your Parent Plus loan by July 1 of this year, 2026, in order to preserve access. Okay, now, when we say you must consolidate by July 1, all right, we really mean the practical deadline here, okay, is actually kind of April 1st. Why is that the case? Well, the consolidation of your Parent Plus loan must be completed by July 1, okay? Not you've submitted it at the Department of Education, right? You've submitted it online, or the loan must be in its new form as a consolidated Parent Plus loan. If it is not, right, you will have missed that deadline, and that means losing access to more affordable repayment options, et cetera. So in order to make sure that that loan is consolidated and it's completed by July 1, we're recommending that borrowers apply at the latest by April 1st of this year to allow time for that processing. It can take anywhere between 2 to 3 months, and we can expect that there's going to be more borrowers who are submitting application for consolidation as a result of this deadline. So again, to recap, you must have a completed Parent Plus consolidation by July 1 in order to preserve access to income-driven repayment and therefore public service loan forgiveness. Okay. Any Parent Plus loan borrowers with questions on this, if you're unsure if you have consolidated or not, you can check that through your Savi account. When your loans are synced, we'll be able to detect whether or not it is consolidated. And if it's not, we will flag that and help you to take that next step. But again, missing that deadline could mean losing access to more affordable repayment options like IDR. So bottom line here is that Parent Plus loan borrowers are going to face a narrower set of options starting in 2026, mid-2026, and this early action will matter. So we're going to be communicating heavily to any users who have Parent Plus loans about this deadline to try to make sure they take that action, but want to make everyone aware what's coming. Okay, next up, let's talk about wage garnishment for defaulted borrowers. So wage garnishment is a type of federal collections activity, and the enforcement around these collections has been shifting. If you remember, last May, the Department of Education announced they were going to resume collections activities. They can include anything from wage garnishment to tax refund offset. And since then, we've seen more and more borrowers fall at risk of default. The rates for delinquency and default have been skyrocketing. And so we know that this is an issue that more and more people are likely to face. Now, wage garnishment for defaulted borrowers was expected to restart in January, but the Department of Ed has paused plans to move forward for right now. Okay, so this came out about a week after they had scheduled to resume. They announced that they were going to be putting those plans on hold. We do not have any idea of an exact date in which they might resume, but everyone should expect that at some point they will, okay, whether it's, a month from now or 6 months from now. But at least this pause on garnishment, or wage garnishment specifically, buys some time for borrowers who were in default. especially because wage garnishment is probably one of the most severe and punitive types of collections activities, at least I've experienced with borrowers, to date. They take up to 15% of your disposable pay, right from your paycheck, it's withheld. They send a letter to your employer, who is legally bound to administer that wage garnishment. And once it starts, it's difficult and very sort of a heavy administrative burden, and it takes time for that to unwind and stop. Okay, so the ideal situation here is avoiding getting to the point of wage garnishment altogether, and that can happen right before you reach default. Millions of borrowers are already falling behind, if not in delinquency and default at this point. And it's a very slippery slope from one missed monthly payment to three, right? Which three missed monthly payments is when you are reported delinquent, and that gets reported to the credit bureaus. And then from three missed, monthly payments to 6 and 9, months, and that's when you're nearing default. But at the point of delinquency, all right, when you are reported delinquent to the credit bureaus, we're also seeing borrowers experience severe credit score drops. I'm talking 100 to 200 points overnight drop in their credit score. And that can really be devastating, right? And something that's hard to come back from. So we are going to be actively trying to identify borrowers who may not be in repayment and at risk, to try and intervene before that happens. And if you are concerned at all about the status of your loans, maybe you've fallen behind when you look at your servicer account, it shows a past due amount. If it shows that past due amount, that means something, all right, is past due, and it could be past due a month, maybe 2 months. It doesn't specify necessarily, right? You want to look into that as soon as possible. Otherwise, again, once it gets reported, it can kind of go downhill from there. Between repayment plan transitions, higher payments, servicing delays, right? It's only increasing the chance that borrowers fall into default. Okay. So the bottom line here is that, the pause on wage garnishment buys some time, but the risk of default is still rising. Okay. And like I said, with implications to your credit score and things like that. So for us here at Savi, supporting all of you, those at risk, even just those concerned about, the future and whether they could fall at risk is going to be one of our most important things this year. And again, if you have any concerns or are not sure where your loans stand, please don't hesitate. We're the people you can reach out to for help. Okay. And that's what we want you to do. So don't delay at all when it comes to default, delinquency, and wage garnishment. And speaking of default, many borrowers are nearing what we call sort of a default cliff. The borrower data is pretty convincing, and so are the borrower surveys that we've collected. People are making trade-offs between loan payments and basic needs. And a growing number of borrowers have fallen behind on those payments. There are already about 6 million or so, maybe even more in default, but millions more who are sort of approaching the point where delinquency turns into default. And when people talk about a default cliff, they're describing sort of this pipeline, right? Because delinquency can turn into default in a matter of months, and this pipeline is getting fuller and fuller by the day. So I want to emphasize something, and make it clear that this is not just about individual behavior, and there should not be, an embarrassment or stigma around this, especially, when it comes to something that is systemic, and it's about the system being chaotic. Plan rules changing, key government tools going offline, the servicing has been uneven, huge volumes of borrowers have had to re-enter repayment, then they're put on forbearance, then they're not sure when they're going back into repayment. It's been chaotic. So what we're going to try to do is make sure that, again, all of you have the help and support that you need. But this confusion, higher payments, reduced flexibility, is a default engine, right? We can see that here at Savi. So we're going to try everything we can to try and prevent that. Okay, moving on. Let's talk a bit more about forgiveness. What's happening? Is it real? Are people having their loans forgiven under PSLF or other programs? So headline here, forgiveness is still real. It is still processing and happening, but it's the progress towards forgiveness that has become harder to see. Kind of explain why. So key government tracking tools, all right, that you would have been able to access on your studentaid.gov account, okay, have either been removed or remain limited. And processing backlogs have made the timeline feel uncertain, even for borrowers who have been doing everything right for years, right? You know what form you need to fill out, you've submitted it every time, you've gotten an update. But in the last year, when you submit it, you don't hear anything for 2 months, and you're left thinking, did they receive it? Are they reviewing it? What's happening, right? All of these create more sort of confusion and anxiety as to what's actually going on and whether or not they can rely on a program to forgive their loans. For example, PSLF buyback requests have completely exceeded processing capacity of the Department of Education, and we've seen delays of a year or more for borrowers to hear back on their buyback request. The federal IDR forgiveness payment tracker, this was something that was supposed to be visible to every single federal student loan borrower on their studentaid.gov account, a simple tracker that showed you how many payments you've made, okay, that have counted towards those forgiveness timelines. This was something that you'd think would have been, easy for them to implement, and a no-brainer. And I can't tell you how many borrowers I've talked to who ask, where can I see how many payments I've made? And unfortunately, the answer is it's not that simple. And really, there's no place where you can see that clearly. That tracker remains largely unavailable, okay? Which means borrowers still can't easily view where they stand on forgiveness timelines under income-driven repayment. Now, for public service loan forgiveness, okay, so if you have submitted a form for public service loan forgiveness and it's been approved, you should be able to see your PSLF tracking and progress on your studentaid.gov account. But for those not eligible for PSLF, which is the majority of federal student loan borrowers, they are not able to see their payment status and progress at all. And this isn't just an inconvenience, right? The visibility matters. Borrowers are being asked to trust a process they can't easily verify. And when you're talking about loan forgiveness, I mean, it's no small thing. It's life-changing. So transparency is kind of the whole point, right? And knowing where you are on that timeline. It also will influence decisions around whether or not you may change into a different repayment plan, let's say, out of the SAVE plan. If you are 2 payments away from hitting that 120, and I can make those 2 payments and be done with this, well, you might switch plans faster and get those 2 payments done and cross the finish line. But you made that decision because you knew how close you were to the finish line, right? So without that visibility, it makes it almost impossible. When you get to your progress, it's harder to plan, harder to spot errors, and harder to trust the system. And so that's where Savi has tried to come in and help borrowers not only monitor their applications to ensure they achieve, that desired outcome, but to help them plan when the visibility is not there on the federal side. So again, if you have questions or concerns about where you stand, please reach out to our customer support team through your Savi account for assistance in navigating that. Now, since this is a popular topic across the board, as far as questions from borrowers, I wanted to take just a second to run through an overview of PSLF buyback. We get these questions, it's probably the top 1 or 2 question we get across the board. So I figured we'd take a second to make sure everyone knows exactly what that is. So it's a federal option that lets eligible PSLF borrowers pay retroactively for certain past months so they can count towards public service loan forgiveness and count as qualifying payment credits. The reason why they would pay retroactively for certain months is if for certain months they may have been in a forbearance, like the SAVE forbearance, where they weren't making payments, okay? It's designed to help borrowers who, were working full-time for qualifying employers, right? But again, had loans in deferment or forbearance during at some point in time. It only applies if buying back those months will help you reach 120 qualifying PSLF payments. So if you've been in the save forbearance and you are just maybe 2 or 3 years into PSLF, okay, you won't be able to submit a buyback request until you've reached closer to that 10 years, okay? And they now limit that ability to submit a request based on your current qualifying payment count in your studentaid.gov tracking account. So they've at first, anyone was able to submit that buyback request, which is why the backlog grew so heavily early on. Now what they're doing is they're limiting that and looking at borrowers who, by their sort of assessment, have reached a certain number of qualifying PSLF payments to be able to submit a buyback request. Now, as far as what months can count, these are past months in deferment or forbearance while you were employed at a qualifying institution, right? Government organization at any level, federal, state, local, or tribal, or a 501c3 nonprofit. To be clear, in-school deferment does not count, so you are not able to buy back those periods. And grace periods do not count. So after you graduate, right, before you actually make your first payment, you have about a 6-month grace period. That does not count. Okay, so no in-school deferment, no grace periods. Now, how much it costs is going to depend on the amount you would have paid under an income-driven repayment plan at the time. Okay, so it'll often be based on sort of your historical income. So if, let's say, you were on the save forbearance, and under the save plan you were paying $10 a month for your monthly payment, and you wanted to buy back 3 months of that forbearance to help you get to the 120. You would pay what you were paying under that save plan, or what you would have paid, so which would be $10 per month, right? $30 total to buy back all 3 of those months. To be clear, it is a lump sum that they are going to sort of quote you, so you're not able to. It's not a sort of an overtime kind of payment thing. You need to buy the months you'd want to buy back, in one fell swoop. And in order to request this, you submit what's called a PSLF reconsideration request and select PSLF buyback. You can access Savi's Help Center. We have a whole article on this, all the details, where you can submit this reconsideration request. It has to be done through your student aid account when logged in. So it's not something that Savi can do on your behalf, unfortunately, but we can instruct you exactly where to go and how to process that request. And again, if you're approved, you have to pay the full buyback amount within 90 days. Okay. So big picture here, right? This buyback can close some of the gaps for borrowers, that they may have experienced because of months spent in forbearance, whether it was of their own volition or something like the save forbearance where they were put into it automatically, and therefore help them cross the finish line and unlock that forgiveness. But it is only going to be available to borrowers who are close to the finish line. So if you are curious, if that's you, right? Again, you can reach out through Savi, or the easiest way is you can check in your studentaid.gov account. You can go to the reconsideration request portal. If you do not see PSLF buyback as an option, that means it is not available to you yet. If you see the option to select PSLF buyback, it is available to you, okay? And they're basing that on how many qualifying payment credits you have in your student aid account. So maybe you need to resubmit an employment certification form and bring your, employment certification current, and that may update and you'd be able to submit a buyback from there. Okay, last thing to wrap things up, and then I am going to turn things over to Austin, but want to just finish up with PSLF and what is happening with the program and the new employer rules on the horizon. So headline here, PSLF is still in place. It remains one of the strongest consumer protections in the federal student loan system because it was written into law, right, back in October 2007. That's sort of like the stabilizing part around public service loan forgiveness. It's the surrounding environment that's shifting, right? The processing backlogs, employer verification friction, and specifically new regulatory efforts to narrow what counts as qualifying employment. And this has created more uncertainty, than borrowers should really have to deal with when it comes to this program. So specifically on this new employer eligibility, there was rules that were finalized at the end of last year that are set to take effect in 2026 that would effectively allow the Department of Ed to deny PSLF for certain employers they deem to be tied to serious illegal activity. And I say that in major air quotes. Austin is going to talk more on this in just a bit, so I'll let him dig into some of the details here. But sort of big picture, most PSLF borrowers will not be affected by these employer eligibility changes. According to the Department of Ed, they estimate that at most 10 employers may be impacted by these changes in the first wave, I should say. And there are many more public servants, who will be not impacted at all. Nevertheless, it still adds another layer of uncertainty that didn't exist before, right? Could this be a possibility that an employer loses eligibility and it's out of their control? One of the good things to reinforce here is that any qualifying employment or eligibility up to that point would still count and remain for borrowers who had been employed at that institution. So they wouldn't lose any qualifying employment that they had achieved up to that point. It would just be sort of going forward. But it reinforces why documentation, okay, and employer certification remain essential, for PSLF, especially in these shifting policies. So if you have not submitted an employment certification form within the last year, even within the last 6 months, we're seeing borrowers do this more frequently because the review time decreases significantly when it's a shorter sort of window or period of time with which they have to look back. And as borrowers get closer and closer to that 120, right, sometimes they're submitting them every few months just to get that account updated so they can cross that threshold. And through Savi, you can submit as many employment certification forms as you need to throughout the year. So we highly encourage you to do that, again, because we can facilitate and ensure it gets signed off by your employers, they're filled out correctly, et cetera. But I would make sure that you are current or as current as possible on your employment certification. And if you have never or yet to apply or submit one of those forms before, but have been working for a qualifying employer for quite some time, now is the time to make sure that you get all of that past employment certified and do so quickly. Okay. I know that was a lot of information, but not to worry. My colleagues are in the Q&A answering questions. Thank you, guys. And we're going to keep on answering those as we turn over to Austin, who is going to do a policy deep dive and talk about some of the ongoing litigation and rulemaking that is happening in the space. So, Austin, take it away.
Thanks, Lindsay. That was great. And thanks to the folks who are answering questions and for sending these questions. They're all super interesting and helpful. Like Lindsay said at the beginning, my name's Austin Hinkle. I'm one of the partners at a law firm called the Public Goods Practice. We're a small practice that's trying to combine personal advocacy with strategies that sort of help borrowers get the remediation and justice they deserve and create systematic change in the market so that we can sort of raise all boats at the same time. We do this by trying to take the toughest cases and holding these servicers and lenders accountable to the sort of multiple state and federal laws that they're required to follow. For example, just to sort of give you a flavor, we're super eager to talk to borrowers that have been in the SAVE forbearance or the SAVE repayment plan for a long time and have been in that forbearance between August 24 and 25 when they were supposed to be getting a 0% interest, but we know that there's actually a big group of borrowers out there who had interest accruing at that time, and those are challenges. Those are the types of errors that we know are more routine than they should be, and the types of work that we're interested in doing. And we're super happy to be here chatting with you all and working with Savi to make sure that the information that you're getting is up to date and is being informed by the policy and the law that's in place. So the first thing that I want to talk about is public service loan forgiveness and those eligibility rules that Lindsay mentioned. Then I'm going to talk about some new things that are coming down the pipeline around graduate student loan borrowing, and then we're going to end. I'm going to sort of end by talking about the SAVE plan and some of the legal challenges that that's facing right now and what the impacts are for folks. So first, on the public service loan forgiveness, if you'll remember, last year, the Department of Education finalized a new rule that gave the Secretary of Education a lot more authority over the program to make changes to individual employers. And what it basically said was that the Secretary of Education could decide by themselves that a particular employer has a quote substantial legal purpose. And if the secretary makes that determination, then from that point forward, the employer would no longer be an eligible employer, and the employees working there would not be able to accrue credit towards public service loan forgiveness for their employment there. There's caveats around how long that lasts and appeal opportunities, but that's the real threat. And I think what was particularly noteworthy about the way the rule was written is that the language is targeted at employers who deal with very politicized topics. So employers that deal with immigration, employers that work with that deal with gender affirming care, that emphasize diversity, equity, inclusion, or that support nonprofit or nonviolent protests and other sort of politically motivated speech. Now, this was and continues to be a very controversial new rule, and was once it was finalized was basically immediately challenged in courts in three different cases. Two of those cases are being brought by sort of private sector nonprofit organizations and and trade associations representing their interests, basically trying to tell the court this is arbitrary in the way that the rules implemented, and shouldn't be allowed to go forward. And then the third case is actually brought by a group of state attorneys generals on behalf of those state governments as employers too. So all three of those cases are kind of operating on the same timeline. At this point, the courts haven't made any decisions. They're kind of in the early stages of hearing the case and gathering all the information. They actually, which is sort of unusual, allowed an opportunity for outside groups to file what are called amicus briefs to help inform the court about all of the risks. And those were due just yesterday. So that gives you a sense about where we're at. And we expect that the court will likely sort of conclude or have some action taken before the implementation date of July 1, 2026. So we'll keep you updated. We'll keep Savi updated. And for now, it's just a thing to keep an eye on. And I think, as Lindsay noted, that the estimates are low, but it does give sort of a sweeping set of authorities to the Secretary of Education to make these changes to eligibility. So we'll keep an eye on it. Now, the Lindsay mentioned the sort of one big beautiful bill, this reconciliation budget package, and a lot of the changes that came out of that, and the SAVE transition is one of those. The one that I wanted to highlight for everybody today is actually related to the way that graduate student loan borrowing works. So once the law is passed, the Department of Education goes through a rule writing process, which is where they're at right now with this rule. So it's not finalized yet, or it's not implemented yet, but we expect it to be over the next year. So before these rules go into place and before the bill was passed, if you were a graduate student, you could functionally borrow up to the entire cost of attendance. That meant tuition, books, transportation, housing expenses, all of those types of things through both what are the sort of graduate loans and then what's called graduate plus loans. Well, the reconciliation bill eliminated the graduate plus program and left in place these traditional graduate loans and set a cap of $20,500 per year for graduate borrowers with a $100,000 lifetime limit. That means that each year you can only borrow from the federal government up to that amount. And anything above that has to be covered in some other way. That can be private student loans, it can be your personal savings, it can be money you're making working, it sometimes can be sort of institutional aid where the college or university lowers your tuition costs. but you're not getting more than this cap for most graduate programs. The administration also sort of redefined what is called a professional program here. And they did it in a way that is much more narrow than how you and I would talk about it, what we think about as actual professionals. What they really just mean are lawyers and people who are getting sort of PhD level medical training. And for those borrowers, their cap's going to be $50,000 a year with a $200,000 lifetime limit. I think in both categories of schools or both categories of programs and for both categories of borrowers, there's been some really great deep dives on what the data we know about cost of attendance means. And it's pretty clear that there's a lot of graduate programs that actually, where borrowers are actually already borrowing more than what these caps would be per year. And so we're expecting that there's really going to be two significant impacts for borrowers. The first is that there will be less graduates in a lot of these fields because they just can't afford to go, right? Federal student loans have the benefit of having a much more limited underwriting process. So almost everybody is eligible for federal graduate loans. But once you have to go to private student loans, eligibility is much harder because you have to be credit worthy and you have to have co-signers. And all of that can be very difficult for people who are going to school and not working, right? So we expect that there'll be some programs that close and there'll be less students that attend. But second is for the students who do go and graduate, their overall loan mix is going to be different than what we see today. Today, when many graduate borrowers graduate, the vast majority of their loans are federal student loans, and they have benefits like public service loan forgiveness and income-driven repayment. But if borrowers are graduating and half their loans are private and half their loans are federal, that overall value of programs like public service loan forgiveness are going to go down. And borrowers are still going to have to pay for the private student loans that they took out that don't have the same kinds of protections. So it's going to be a much more complicated employment decision and a much more complicated repayment decision for borrowers that have these sort of mixed sets of loans. The goal, I see this in the questions, I'll just sort of say, the goal of these caps is to help limit the amount that tuition's been going up. It's been, the reality is that tuition's been going up really fast. And policymakers are desperate to find ways to help make higher education more affordable. And so I say all of this not to pass judgment on this attempt at it. I mean, I think that anything we can do to help limit costs and make it more attainable for borrowers and students, the better. But just to flag that it will change the way in which people finance graduate school, and many more borrowers will turn to private loans. So, the real question is whether there's enough private loans out there so that colleges can continue raising these prices on the back of private loans, or whether it will have the sort of intended effect of reducing the rate of the increase of these graduate school tuitions. And then the last thing I'll spend, sorry, we can go to the next slide. The last thing I'm talking about here today is the SAVE plan, and Lindsay did a really great job of explaining sort of where we're at with this, with this program. The thing that I will add, the only thing I'll really add here is that there is both the law passed in Congress mandates the end of the SAVE program, and this settlement that the proposed settlement between the Department of Education and the state of Missouri that would require the Department of Education to enter into a rulemaking process that will repeal SAVE and sunset these other IDR plans in the way that Lindsay talked about. Those are happening. We expect that even though the sort of bill that says, we need to end SAVE doesn't set a deadline until July 1st, 2028, we expect that deadline will actually be towards the end of this year, depending on how the rules go and what types of legal challenges there are. But this does leave a lot of borrowers in limbo for how long they'll be in the SAVE forbearance. So the real question that I think folks are asking is when and how to switch plans. And I think Lindsay did a great job of explaining all of the various pieces at play here. How close are you to PSLF forgiveness? How is the buyback program working? One insight I wanted to share is the way in which this sort of happened before. So if you remember, all the way back in to 2023, basically, when we were rolling off of the COVID forbearance, like the Department of Education issued the SAVE rules. And for about a year, borrowers were able to enroll in SAVE and made payments under SAVE. But what they were doing on the back end is they were moving people from an older repayment plan that was called Repay directly into Save. And to do that, they used income information that they had on file already. So borrowers who were getting put into Save from Repay had their payments calculated based on that income information. Now, I think we know there were errors, but the point here is that we don't know what the Department of Education is going to do. But I would suspect that they are going to use income documentation they have on file to move borrowers from Save into RAP or whatever plan they direct people into. It sort of makes the most sense that if you were in an IDR plan, they would keep you in an IDR plan. And the only way they can do that without booting millions of people into standard plans is if they use the income they have on file. So for some borrowers who maybe haven't recertified their income or have higher incomes today, that transition may be, that new repayment amount may be calculated to be lower. The other thing I'll flag here, and the last thing I'll say, is that there are, the buyback program is a really important consideration for many people. And when you go through the buyback program, there's this really long delay in processing. But in the meantime, what the Department of Education's website is telling you is that you need to continue to make payments. So if you happen to be in a SAVE forbearance right now and you apply for repay, you're going to stay in that SAVE forbearance. But if you're in a different repayment plan with monthly payments due, then those are going to be the monthly payments due. This buyback issue, the really extensive length of time it's taking, is another thing that we're particularly interested in and eager to work on. But I think for borrowers here, this level of complexity is just really hard to process. And I think that's where the expertise at Savi, their one-on-one advising, and sort of Lindsay's deep work here is going to be super valuable to helping you talk through and make sure that you're accounting for what all those sort of permutations are. So I'll leave it there and pass it back to Lindsay to, I think, wrap us up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Austin. And, we hope to have sort of Austin and his team, joining us on future town halls, because these sort of insights are really helpful for us here at Savi, but I hope for all of you. So thank you again, Austin. Just to sort of wrap things up with some final thoughts here. So, as always, Savi is going to be on your side through thick and thin, but through every turn of the policy landscape. We're going to continue to monitor these changes and programs, and provide you with the most accurate and up-to-date information. We do that a couple different ways. We send out our monthly State of Student Debt newsletter that goes out the first week of every month to sort of recap sort of some of the major ongoing themes and things that are happening in the student loan world. We send out sort of breaking news kind of alerts, policy updates when something comes out that we think borrowers need to be aware of in the moment. And we host regular webinars and town halls to make sure that, not only are you sort of given that information, but we're here to explain it and answer those questions in real time. And you always have access to our support team to dig into that with our very dedicated agents, and get a sense of what that means for you personally. We're always advocating for borrowers and working to ensure that all of you have access to affordable repayment and forgiveness options. That's been part of the work we've done with Austin and with other organizations, advocacy organizations, to ensure that we are elevating the voices and concerns of you all, the borrowers, and we continue to ask for your feedback and for those stories and concerns concerns, please share those with us through our customer support team. No concern is too small. We're monitoring all of them. And if you have questions about your situation, again, you can contact our support team for one-on-one help. You can upgrade to Savi Essential or Pro, where you're able to get the full suite of access to that support, all of the application support you could need for PSLF, income-driven repayment. And I want to make one small call out, which is making sure that your student loans are synced or updated in your Savi account, because this allows us to monitor your loans directly while you don't have to, and identify if you're impacted by any of these changes. And this is down to the nitty-gritty details of, monitoring whether a payment was made last month. If we see that a payment hasn't been made in the last month, that's a good indication that perhaps it was missed, and we can try to stage an intervention to avoid you falling further behind. Or if you have Parent Plus loans, right, we're able to detect that and make sure that we're communicating with you to get those loans consolidated in time for that deadline. So making sure that all of your information is complete in your Savi account helps you help us, all right? So just quickly, a few next steps here to wrap things up, and then we will send you all on your way. You can access your Savi account via this QR code, but we will be sending everyone a follow-up email so you can access your account that way if you have any issues. You're going to type in that employer or association name, and that's going to direct you to the appropriate Savi microsite that exists for your benefit. And if you don't see your partner, you can just simply click that button and we'll get you on your way. And I'm hoping most of you have logged into your Savi account before, but if not, this is your Savi dashboard, sort of like mission control for everything Savi, where you'll be able to see and do a lot of things related to your Savi account and your student loans. And using Savi is as simple as 3 simple steps, right? Instead of having to fill out a bunch of different applications, okay, I've got my IDR, then I have to process, 3 employment certification forms for my current and past employers. With Savi, there's one application, what we call the Savi application. We ask you some basic questions. You're able to see your options. And then from there, we we pre-fill and submit those applications on your behalf. So you're not having to worry about processing and handling all of those. It significantly reduces the human error. To this day, most of the PSLF applications that are submitted are rejected because of clerical errors, admin errors, and things like that. And with Savi, the way we've designed our system is to remove those completely. So we can ensure that borrowers are getting into those programs and they're not delayed by any of those technical hiccups. And this is another important thing I just want to highlight is the ability to invite your friends and family to benefit from Savi as well. From your Savi dashboard on the left-hand side, you can click invite friends or family. And just want to point out that if you invite 3 or more friends or family, okay, you can receive a 50% off coupon code to use on your Essential account. So if you have not upgraded to that Essential plan for this year, and you are interested in doing so, and you would like to receive 50% off of that price, you can do that now, and you will receive a coupon code immediately in your inbox to use to upgrade. And again, when it comes to making sure your information is complete and up to date in your Savi account, right? For those of you who have done this before, you've seen these screens, but for those who might not be familiar, we're going to ask you some basic questions around your family size, tax filing status, income. Those are important in determining your eligibility around income-driven repayment plans. We're going to ask you about your employment. This is important for determining your eligibility for forgiveness programs like public service loan forgiveness and teacher loan forgiveness. You're going to want to put your current and any previous employers you might have had because these programs are retroactive, right? That's just going to only help us refine further the estimate around your forgiveness eligibility that we're able to provide. And then the last step is linking your federal and or private student loans. We give you a couple of different options to do this. You can select which one is easiest. And then that's it. You've reached sort of the end where we show you your plan options. This is just an example. This is old one from the Save plan. $18 a month just goes to show you how much that Save plan did cut payments in half for so many people. But you'll be able to see that new monthly payment, okay, on a particular IDR plan, the total that you would pay over time, how long until you'd be eligible to reach forgiveness, I mean, down to the year and month, and how much in forgiveness you'd be eligible to receive. So you can expand below for more details, compare that plan to other plans, but generally we identify at the top the one we think is best for you. And it's at that point where the next steps are going to be submitting applications. And that's where you have the option to either continue as DIY completely for free and do those applications on your own. We actually will send them to you with instructions, and it's up to you to fill those out and get those submitted. Or you can upgrade to our essential plan where we do all of that for you. So we're going to pre-fill, digitize, and submit those on your behalf, and then monitor them with you to ensure that the servicers aren't delaying too much or they're making mistakes. And that means that you are going to get on those programs and plans and get closer to that forgiveness. It also gives you access to our incredible support team for one-on-one assistance via chat, telephone, email, you name it, you have access. And we have a pro level as well, sort of our highest concierge tier of support and access, which has all of the features in Essential, but you're able to actually schedule sort of one-on-one onboarding sessions from your account. So you're able to sit down, select the date and time, schedule out in advance with one of our amazing experts, and you get a dedicated agent that's going to help you each step of the way. That person is going to be sort of your savvy student loan person, which I know is meaningful for a lot of people. So these are options for how you can utilize Savi, and it's up to you as to which one you think you need at any given moment, right? They all have money back guarantees, so you can request a refund, no questions asked. But when you are an essential member, we try to make it as easy as possible to get these forms completed with literally the click of a button, this Start ECF. We will pre-fill that information and we actually send it to your employer on your behalf, any current or previous employers you may have had. So you're not having to deal with the back and forth, hunting down someone from HR at a company you worked for 10 years ago, which can be a huge barrier for many people trying to fill out these forms. And then only to find once you've submitted it that they didn't fill out the form correctly and it's been rejected. And now you've wasted 6 months waiting only to find that information out. So we manage and monitor that process start to finish. And then you can actually see and monitor that progress as well from your Savi dashboard. On the left, you can see this is someone with 3 different employment certification forms in progress, as well as their income-driven repayment application. And on the right is an example of how sort of zoomed in, we track the different steps and progress of those applications, right? What we might still need from you, what we have submitted to the Department of Education and the estimated time for them to review. All of these things provide a level of transparency and visibility into the process that personally, from my experience as a borrower, you cannot find anywhere else, and allows us to be proactive about monitoring these applications and your progress so that we can intervene before mistakes and errors are made, and hold certain entities, whether it be your servicer or the Department of Ed, accountable for processing these things correctly. And last but not least, our customer support team, you can access them through your Savi account. We have a help center with amazing content. A lot of the things we shared here today are in that help center. If you want to sort of dive deeper, you can contact support or click contact support to send a message to our team. We also have live chat. These are actual human experts. My colleagues here at Savi, it's not AI, despite the fact that many think so. But you can talk to a real human expert on our team through your Savi account. And we also have a telephone number that's listed there as well. Our wait times are about 2.5 seconds. Again, our goal was to make the experience the opposite of what many people have with their servicer, which is waiting on hold for hours. So we want to be as accessible as we can to all of you. So to wrap things up here, just a few next steps. You can access again through that QR code, but this will be in your inbox as well. Your Savi account, make sure that Savi application is complete and up to date with all your latest information. Again, if even if you don't take any action, it will allow us on the back end to be able to identify if you are in a certain category of borrower that may be subject to an upcoming change, and we can communicate with you more specifically about it, right? So it's only going to help you, be better situated going forward. You can upgrade it to Essential or Pro if you want us to take on this administrative burden for you and be there to monitor and make sure that your loan situation is where it should be, and get those applications completed, especially if you are PSLF eligible. Employment certification forms, folks are submitting these more frequently, and I'm a fan of that. I'm encouraging that. So you can do that through your Savi account, like I said, with the click of a button, but you want to make sure that your certification of employment is as current as possible, okay? So you can do that very easily through Savi. And again, if you need assistance or have a question at any point, shoot us a message through your Savi account, and we will be there. So we hope that this was helpful. We appreciate any and all feedback as always. A big thank you again to Austin Hinkle for joining us today, and to all of you for taking time out of your day. We will see you next month. Have a good one.